Plan B with Sarina Bellissimo. The biggest stars, gossip, events, and the biggest tunes. Plan B, your weekend fix.
Spin 103.8.
Scott, congratulations on Black Mass.
Thank you very much.
I absolutely loved it.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. Thank you.
What was it about Whitey Bulger that you went, you know what? I need to tell this story on the big screen.
Well, it was Shakespearean. Here you have one brother who's the most notorious criminal in the city's history, and you have a brother, his brother, who's the most powerful politician. And then you have their childhood friend who's ascending the ranks of the FBI, who gives the criminal kind of a license to kill. And it's just, you can't make this stuff up. Truth is often stranger than fiction. So I just found it really compelling.
But Scott, isn't there a bit of you that's a little bit scared? Because this is recent history, right? So
a little bit scared to make this film. Well, sure, look, anytime you're making a true life story about people who still exist and a couple of them who are now walking the streets of Boston, you often, you make a film like this with some trepidation. But if you are, a film director or an artist of any kind, you try not to allow people to suppress what it is that you do.
I'm not usually a fan of gangster films because sometimes I do feel like they romanticize it.
Almost always, yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get the studio to agree to let you make your film?
Well, because I told the studio, and then they agreed that there were many victims and victims' families that were still have these open emotional wounds that have yet to heal, and that if I were to glamorize or romanticize these men, I would be trivializing what took place. And this is not the work of Mario Puzo or other fiction writers, but this all took place. So it was really important that I told it as unadorned as possible.
You make a film like this, right? And look, I'm not saying Whitey was a good person, because he wasn't. He was a terrible person who did some terrible things. Indeed. But did your opinion change of him after making this film?
Well, what I most found was that the truth was extremely elusive. Whitey Bulger believed one thing, John Connolly and the FBI another. The federal prosecutor, Fred Weishak, who was portrayed by Corey Stahl, he believed yet something else. And then you had the authors of Black Mass, who were the Boston Globe reporters. Yeah. Finding the truth was very, very elusive. But what I will say is I wanted to approach James Bulger as not just a one-dimensional villain or criminal. Yes, he was cold, and he's cunning and chilling and venal and violent. But I also wanted to see him in moments with his mom that might be more humorous, or tender moments with Dakota Johnson's character or his son, and then these psychologically violent moments with Julianne Nicholson or at the steak dinner scene. So I wanted you to get a full-bodied portrait of who this was. But again, this is a narrative feature, it's a fictional film, and it's not a documentary.
Yeah. Johnny Depp was phenomenal in this. You said, some people turned up onto set and went, oh my gosh, we feel like we're in Whitey's presence.
Oh, yeah. How
do you direct someone who is as fabulous as Johnny Depp? Do you sit back and go, Johnny, do your thing, or do you actually give him some direction?
Oh, yeah, no. We worked very closely, collaborated very closely. As a former actor, I really admire actors. I revere them, and I give them the room to take great risks and to fail, because out of that is where you find true magic. Johnny never, he couldn't have been more collaborative, and he had no ego whatsoever, and was such a team player, not only with me, but with all the other actors, that what I've realized is that the best actors, the great actors that I've worked with, Jeff Bridges in my first film, Crazy Heart, or Christian Bale in Out of the Furnace, or Robert Duvall in Crazy Heart, and now Johnny and the rest of this cast, Benedict Cumberbatch, Peter Sarsgaard, Kevin Bacon, these guys are all veterans, and they crave very close collaboration or direction.
It's actually really interesting to hear you say that, right? Because some of the names you listed off there, Christian Bale, Johnny Depp, a lot of people go, oh, they're a bit hardcore. So it's actually really interesting to hear that these people take their profession seriously.
Oh, extremely.
But they don't think of themselves higher than anybody else.
Oh, no. Christian couldn't, and Jeff Bridges, all the people I've just mentioned to you could not be better and nicer people who are largely egoless. And I've heard horror stories about actors, movie stars, who, when the camera has finished on their coverage and you turn around to the other actor, but that they leave and somebody else stands in for them. These actors in my films try to make everybody better, including themselves. I could not have been more blessed in my 3 films to work with better, more committed, or more focused actors and actresses.
I have to say with this film, yes, it's all about Johnny Depp. But at the same time, it's not all about Johnny Depp because the supporting cast you put together aren't necessarily the Hollywood A-list you would think of. How did you go about, I love Joel Edgerton, and it was fabulous to see him playing an American and Benedict Cumberbatch playing an American. You didn't go to the usual suspects.
Right. I try to stay away from the A-list as much as possible. Not because I don't like those actors. I certainly do, but I never want my audience to be taken out of a film. Too often, even in small parts that are either miscast or not well performed, they take you out of what's a great film.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get all of my actors in the same key. So to do that, you cast actors whom I've long admired, and I reach out to them and tell them I have a part I'd love for them to consider. And if you know their body of work, you know what they're capable of, and then you speak to a couple of directors who've worked with them, and everybody that's on all three of my films, it has been the most pleasurable of experiences I could have ever hoped for.
Scott, you said you're a former actor. Have you ever been tempted, because the films that you've made have been amazing, have you ever been tempted to write yourself a part or put yourself in?
No, because I'm better suited for behind the camera. You learn very quickly that even if you thought you had a little bit of talent as an actor, that when you watch the camera turn over and Jeff Bridges or Christian Bale or Johnny Depp is in front of that lens, you realize very quickly that there's a difference between being moderately talented and gifted. And these men are gifted.
Well, do you know what? So are you. You do an amazing job behind the camera. Thank you so much for Black Mass, and can't wait for your next film.
So sweet. Thank you.
Okay. Plan B with Sarina Bellissimo. Your weekend fix.
Number one for music and entertainment.
Spin 103.8.